So when you have the live stream, just give me thumbs up. Oh, we're good. Okay. Well, appreciate you being here on a good spring day. Man, this is what we have to look forward to. Love it. And I'm back from Rome just to come to a UTA meeting. I love it. I should have no, I'm just kidding. Troy's here, so they thought maybe you wouldn't be here, but I'm glad you're here. Julie, I talked to her on the phone. Fulmer, Mayor of Vineyard, her family's come down with some unpleasant sickness, so she's not going to be with us today, so we'd like to excuse her. Let me go ahead and I'll start. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm Jeff Acerson, and follow me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And looks like Kathy, you're going to do an oath of office. We've got Mayor Dan Pay. All right, welcome.
Thank you.
Stand here and speak in the microphone. Raise your right hand, please. I, Dan Pay.
I, Dan Pay.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will support, obey, and defend.
That I will support, obey, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of this state.
And the Constitution of this state.
And that I will discharge the duties of my office.
And that I will discharge the duties of my office.
As advisory board member alternate.
As an advisory board alternate.
For the Utah Transit Authority.
For the Utah Transit Authority.
With fidelity.
With fidelity. Thank you.
Yeah, those oath of offices are the hardest things to repeat. Anyway, good job. We'll have a safety minute, first minute with Lamont Worthy. Thank you, Lamont.
Hello, and thank you. Here at UTA, we have a belief that everything we do needs to be done safely. With that, safety extends beyond just the borders here at work. They extend into our personal lives at home. With the weather getting beautiful, as we all can see, we're going to start with our outdoor activities. All that's been on my mind is firing up the grill. So I would like to talk for a minute about having safe grill practices. So you want to make sure your grill is away from your home. You want to make sure you check your cables and tubes going in and out from the propane tank if you don't use coal when you fire it up, especially that first time. Make sure you have your kids away, well away, and that you're not letting your 4-year-old operate the grill. And my 4-year-old likes to. Also, when you're out there and about doing your thing, just remember that it's to be fun, but it's also a serious thing with your grill. It is fire, and it can harm. So I'd like to thank you for that, and thank you for taking the time for safety.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Karen, do we have? It looks like we might have. Do we have some public comment?
We do have one public comment from Jim Riding.
Hi, Mayor. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm come to speak in support of item number 10 on our agenda, which is a presentation that West Jordan will have regarding the city center, which is just on the other side to the east of our city hall. It's about a 50-acre site occupied right now by the Jordan School District. There's a track station right there as well. And in that 50-acre site, we feel like it's an ideal place to put in some high-density housing, some offices, some other retail right there. It's zoned for 75 units an acre. So there's a lot of high-density housing we could put right there, right next to the track station. So we're hoping that good consideration could be made of making this a TOD. We definitely would need to build a parking garage, a parking structure there. And then the first phase, which you'll see a little bit later, will allow the school district to stay there for the time being, until they can be made whole. They're a willing participant in this as well as WFRC is. We put a study together. The city, WFRC, and the school district all contributed money to make this study happen, which is what you're going to see today. And so we appreciate the opportunity that we have to come here and explain this to you and let you know that we as a city support this activity. So thank you very much.
That's all I was presented.
Okay. Well, any other public comment that wants to register last minute? Okay, we're good. We'll move forward. Let's go and move on to item number 6, which is approval of the February 20th, 2019 Advisory Board meeting minutes. Any corrections, additions? Okay, we have a motion to approve. Is there a second? Okay, call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Sounds like that was unanimous. Thank you. Agency report. Steve.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things I'd like to report to the Advisory Committee. We had a report come out of Washington from the Federal Transit Administration called their Capital Investment Grant Report, where they rate the various projects around the country, and you have to get rated in order to advance towards getting a grant to construct your project. And the Ogden BRT project was rated this year in that report. So it's a big step forward for us. Appreciate all the work of all the stakeholders up in Weber County to make that happen. A lot of partners invested in that project. So we're excited to work towards, that's a major step now, working towards actually getting a grant awarded for the project to move that forward. Also wanted to talk briefly about free fare days. We had on February 28th and March 1st, we picked up 20,000 additional riders on the 28th and about 29,000 riders on March 1st. It was about a 16% increase overall in ridership for that day compared with our typical February days. Bus increased about 10%, light rail about 14%, and Frontrunner saw a 46% increase in ridership over the 2 days. And based on standard quantities, we estimate about 96,000 pounds of net emissions were reduced for the 2 days. So really proved what we could accomplish on bad air days. I think we were funded in the legislature for about 7 days or so in the upcoming years. Appreciate all the stakeholders, Salt Lake City, Salt Lake County, Davis County, IHC, who all participated to make that happen. That's my report.
I'm just curious, as cities, did any of you get any feedback from your citizens on those free fare days? Any?
I know for us, there were a lot of people who enjoyed it and were using the bus, but not as much transit traffic coming east to west. And so I'm wondering if there's a way for us to launch information about that opportunity next year a little ahead of time, more ahead of time probably.
And I think that's the intent with DEQ, and that is to do some projections to be able to find out when these days are going to occur sooner and give more advance notice to the public.
Thank you. All right, let's go ahead. Carlton, you came in at the nick of time. Thank you. You're a busy person.
Oh, well, thank you. And I am glad I made it back. We felt like it was important as a board that we just update you on a couple things, and certainly as there are questions either during our short presentation or later, would welcome them and want to make sure that we clarify any questions you have. Both in our own thinking and at recommendations of some others, and also in our responsibility to report back to the governor, whom we serve at his pleasure, and that it was important to have periodic updates as to the progress and decisions and things that we're going through as a board, some of which has come to the advisory board, but others would not. And you know, without getting into minute agenda items, which some of you who previously served, you know, approval of contracts, those kinds of things, didn't want to necessarily proliferate this report, but we're calling it our quarterly report. It'll talk about initiatives where we're spending our time, particular policy issues that we're looking at, outreach efforts that we're making as a board, and some of the general direction that we've gone. And so this is our first rendition of it, and would welcome feedback of what's helpful, maybe what's not, but certainly gives you at least an outline of the activities that we're involved in on a regular basis. I will say we just recently, as last night, returned back from Washington, D.C. With the APTA legislative conference there, and had a good interchange with the FTA administrator, Jane Williams, and some conversation about where we're going. We certainly had some great conversations with other transit agencies. Freak show is a little bit harsh, but you felt a little bit like a freak show. It's fair to say, and we knew this going into it, there are not a lot of models for us to mirror after. We had CEOs who probably were a little bit hesitant to find out more about our models, and we had board members who were maybe anxious to figure out about the board model. And so we know that over the course of the year, a lot of our efforts will be quietly watched. And so, you know, we're appreciative of your feedback and your guidance, and as we go through some parts of that process. If we can go to the next slide. Periodically, and this is true with any organization where you have attrition through retirements or individuals choosing to make, you know, other career directions, you know, you look at your organization and you take a reflective look at what changes ought to be made. After working with with Steve and others and looking at some options, we had decided to eliminate one of our chief officer positions. Dave Garris retired a few weeks ago at the very first of the month of March, and looked at his area and where that might best fit within the organization, and have moved some of those items around. A couple of them will, and we approved this morning in our board meeting this organization structure, and a couple of those items will now report directly to the executive director, including the security and safety, and then also information technologies would report to the executive director. There's a new position that we've added, a compliance officer, and Lisa Bowman, who's been in our attorney's office, is going to transition into that position. A number of the efforts that she makes are compliance related. They're not really actually legal actions and don't require necessarily for her to be counsel to the agency, and certainly helps retain some of her knowledge and has a improved focus. We're, as part of that, and you'll see this probably more in your next advisory board meeting, but also in our next quarterly report, we're going to start going through a number of policies through the agency, and also the board policies, and those board policies will certainly come back to you for feedback and direction. I just, as a side note, would make note that based on state law, by mid-April timeframe, we'll be transitioning the bulk, if not all, of our legal work to the Attorney General's office, and they're in the process of that transition. So, any questions I can respond to at this point? Great, thank you very much for the time.
We should let you catch your breath a little bit more. That's so were the blossoms happening in DC?
No, I'm
I mean,
I'm never really that lucky, but it wasn't freezing cold like it was with the National League of Cities.
Okay.
Seemed to always be cold when the NLC met, so it was at least sunny.
Thanks, Carlton. Next, we'll move on to the discussion items. Mary, yeah, there's she, right there on the front row. Mid-Valley, I don't have to introduce it, you know. The Mid-Valley Connector BRT update.
Hi, thank you all. So I'm going to talk about the Mid-Valley Connector BRT project. Last time I think I presented the capital projects development process, and we said we would come back to you folks periodically and let you know where projects were. So this is one of those projects that we wanted to update you on. I think a lot of you are not familiar with it yet. I've asked Loretta Markham to sit with me as well in case there's any details I can't answer. Loretta is the consultant who's prepared the environmental study report for this project. And then I'd also want to recognize Mayor Overson is here in support of the project as well. So do I have a clicker? I do. So what this project is, it's going to be a new bus rapid transit project. What would connect the it would start at the Murray Central Station where there's tracks in Front Runner. It would go to the Salt Lake Community College in Taylorsville and then continue on to West Valley Tracks, end of line track center. There would be about 1.4 miles of exclusive bus lane on 45th South. And we do not anticipate getting federal funds for this, so we did this as a local environmental process. So we did an environmental study report. We did not do the federal NEPA process on this project. Give you a little bit of background on the project. Back in, I think, September 2013, we did a decision document. We did environmental and decision document on the project, which was called the Taylorsville-Murray Transit Project. And it just went from Murray to the Salt Lake Community College. But then we extended it to West Valley Central Station. So we've come back and we did another draft environmental study report. Back in November, that was finished, and then we had a public comment period that ran for a month. And then we have so far had, the locally preferred alternative was added to the Wasatch Front Regional Council's long-range plan. So we have that in the plan, so we can move forward getting the cities to adopt it. Taylorsville City adopted it in January. And then we don't have that. And we did find out that West Valley City just adopted it last week, and we are still anticipating Mary's approval sometime in April. They were going to take it to their city council. So I did hand out a one-pager in your packets. I don't know if you have it. It looks something like this. It gives a good summary of the project. But here it is on the board as well. So you could see the highlighted yellow is the route. And so the top is the West Valley City, the tracks hub there. And then it would go in shared right-of-way along, is that 3200? 2700 West. And then turn down at 4700 West. It pulls into the Salt Lake Community College where we would have a new hub there, and then back out onto 4700, which turns to 4500. And you see the dark blue there is 1.4 miles of exclusive right-of-way, and there'd be center stations in that area. And then it would continue on through neighborhoods to the Murray Central Station. And there's a lot of details on here. It's a total of 7 miles, 1.4 dedicated lane, 15 stations, frequency 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the time of day. Right now we're looking at just regular 40-foot buses, but we're still, we'd have to decide that for sure. We anticipate we need 11 buses. And if we had opening day in 2021, we anticipate 2,200 to 2,700 riders. Capital costs are estimated right now at $45.4 million. And an annual operating cost of 4.7, which includes bus leasing for that project. So some of the benefits, it's going to provide a great connection, tracks and front runner stations to the community college and through the neighborhood, the communities. It would be 1.4 miles of exclusive BRT lanes. With all the stations would be enhanced stations, and we'd have signal priority for the BRT buses. There would be a new transit hub at Salt Lake Community College. They have a lot of traffic, buses going in and out of there, so this would be a nice hub to help accommodate that. We would have additional bus bays added at Murray Central Station to support the additional buses that would be BRT buses going there. And we'd have complete streets along 4500 South. The cross sections show nice bike paths and sidewalks all along there. There'd also be a connection to the Jordan River Parkway Trail. Impacts, not a lot of impacts. There would be just minor right-of-way acquisition, less than a half an acre needed, because there's such a wide right-of-way on 4500 right now, so we don't need a lot of right-of-way. We would remove 2 historic buildings. They're apartments. Taylorsville City currently owns those apartments. They are low-income rental units, but as people are moving out, they're not getting filled. So we're hoping that not many people would be dislocated from this. Very minor amount of wetland impacts, less than a tenth of an acre. Hazardous waste. The Murray Central Station is built over a hazardous waste site called the Murray Smelter Site Overlay District, or SSOD. So we would have to take precautions any construction we did in that area. Let's see, project cost, I mentioned it previously, but we're estimating a capital cost of $45 million and the annual cost of $4.7 million, which includes a 12-year bus lease of about a little over $500,000 a year for buses. Let's see, next steps. Well, West Valley City has adopted, as I mentioned last week, so we're still waiting for Murray City to adopt the LPA. We have to develop a funding plan, so we're looking now to our partners to try to identify funding commitments, with hopefully some of it being approved by you in the future to help to spend some UTA funds as well. So UTA, the board here would have to approve the capital project plan, and that would come to you after we have the LPA all approved and the funding plan identified. And then after you approved it, the Board of Trustees would approve it as well. The decision document is drafted and ready to go, but it can't be issued until the LPA is adopted by everyone, including the advisory board and the board. And so once the LPA is adopted and the capital plan is adopted, we could start final design construction. And actually, there is currently some design plans, so design will advance to some extent over the next several months. So the next time we come back to you, we'll be asking for approval of the LPA and possibly the funding plan if we're at that point. So, any questions?
Board members? Karen?
So back on your estimated ridership, is that new riders or is that riders coming off of other systems?
I believe it's, I'll let you answer it, Loretta.
Yeah, so there is
Oh, there we go. Not a push and hold. No, note to self. So right now the 4500 bus line is a local service, and with the capture of the 22 to 2700 riders on opening day, it would take approximately about 900 riders from that local service. The local service does take a different route than the BRT, and so there is and it's primarily that 1.4 miles along 4500 South into the Salt Lake Community College, where there is that overlap. And so there's local service, and that route in particular is designed to stay in operation once BRT comes online.
Others? Well, thank you for the update.
Okay,
We'll look forward to the next one.
Okay, thank you.
Steve, do you have anything you want to say? We good? Okay.
And I just have a request.
Please.
We've got members from the city and Mayor Overson here, and if possible, could she just provide comment. We didn't do it during the
Sure, yeah.
item 5,
Go
so
ahead.
okay, perfect.
I mean, you don't want to attend a meeting if you can't say something, you know, it's.
Thank you for this opportunity and for considering this project. We are so excited and delighted. As you know, transportation east-west is critical in our valley, and this is the center of the valley. This is a project that we've been working on, dreaming and thinking and putting to paper for quite a long time. We've established some great partnerships, and we are ready to move forward. We're looking for funding and looking for cooperating partners, and just super stoked about this project and would appreciate your positive feedback and recommendation as we move forward.
Well said. And let's make sure it moves forward. Thank you. Okay, Eddie and Brian, I guess. I'm not sure who's going to speak first, but I'm sure you'll work that out. It's on the coordinated mobility.
I'll speak first.
Okay.
So thank you, Chair. My name's Eddie Cummins. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at UTA. And today we just wanted to provide some details on our coordinated mobility services. This is a really great program, helps a lot of people in our community, and we're excited to share some details. I have Ryan Taylor with me today. He's the manager of coordinated mobility, and he and his team have done a really great job of building this program and also managing this program. So with that, I'll turn the time over to Ryan to provide the presentation.
Thanks, Eddie. We haven't been around very long. We were established about 4 years ago, and so most people say, what in the world is coordinated mobility? When you think about mobility, we'd probably like to start out with a story. Each one of us probably came here today either using a transit pass or one of these. And, you know, we can get around, we can get to work, we can get to school, shopping, the doctor, pretty easily. My grandfather was lucky. He didn't give his up until he was 90 years old. He probably should have given it up when he was 88, but he gave it up when he was 90. My brother-in-law is only 2 years older than me. In 10 years, he was diagnosed with MS. And that cruel disease has taken away much of his ability. And he can no longer utilize his driver's license. He lives in Tooele, and so he's kind of isolated with public transportation options. And so it's hard for him to get around. And quite frankly, for mobility limited people, whether you're a senior or whether you have a disability or whether you're a veteran and you don't have much at all, it's difficult. And so coordinated mobility, it's our job to try and put our arms around all those entities that are trying to facilitate transportation for these groups. And so we do that by our partnerships, because quite frankly, there's limited funds in order to make this happen. These are funds outside of UTA buses and trains. Most of these funds are federal, and they go to local nonprofits or government agencies like Salt Lake County Aging or Davis County and their aging services. And those entities do the best they can, but they really don't have a lot of resources to make these quite expensive trips for individuals. For example, Salt Lake County Aging about 2 years ago was turning down 400 trip requests a month for their Rides to Wellness program. Now, what did they do to eliminate that? They had to put in really tight financial restrictions in order to even qualify for their service, their limited service they provide. And so we, in our department, try and get all these folks together and find better ways in how to make these trips happen. I want to give you some examples of this. You know, we work with technology, we implement different programs, travel training, and really trying to assess and access the best with the resources that we have in our community. We do this first by having coordinating councils. So we have 3 of those that are established. We meet every other month, and these are representatives from these agencies where we get together and discuss the gaps and how we can put in solutions to solve those gaps. And then we take the limited amount of resources that we have, and here's an example of some of the partners that we meet with regularly. And we say, how can we better this situation? And primarily, the kind of the large pot of money that we have
is through the FTA grant program. It's called the 5310, and that is for people with disabilities and seniors and to enhance their transportation options. UTA administers this through my office, and we give out grant awards to these government agencies and nonprofits. So this goes back to when we took over the program. Since 2013, we've granted about just over $6 million in grant awards, and the vast majority of that goes to vehicles. And typically an accessible vehicle that can handle someone who's using a mobility device like a wheelchair. But we also do other projects, and you know, here's an example of when we've delivered some of those vehicles. We've helped out some municipalities in connecting people into transit with a few sidewalks and improvements. But again, the vast majority goes to either operations for those vehicles or for vehicles themselves. We've also done some creative projects where we've teamed up with the community. In Provo and Orem, we've teamed up with United Way and MAG, and we built a volunteer driver program where we provided vehicles, and United Way administers the program. They get volunteers to drive these for those people that needs those trips. We have implemented a website where you can find your trip. So you go to our utahridelink.com, or you can call our 211 service that many people know about and ask them, and they can help guide you to what transportation resources are available in our community. Problem is, there aren't a lot of resources available unless you're eligible through a program. And so if you're not eligible for a county program or a disability state-run program, it's really difficult to find an option just because the resources are not there. We worked with Tooele County to implement a microtransit project. So we use small vehicles where we connect Grantsville and Stansbury Park and Tooele. Been very successful in giving people mobility in that neck of the woods. This one is not launched yet, but we're working with the Utah Developmental Disabilities Council and Lyft in order to get some accessible vehicles onto the Lyft platform. Now, Lyft and Uber are fabulous in what they do. Unfortunately, if you have a wheelchair, you can't use any of their services because neither one of them operate any wheelchair accessible vehicles in our area, and quite frankly, they struggle with that around the world. And so we are coming up with an innovative way of trying to potentially get some of those vehicles onto their platform. It's working with the lawyers right now, so we've got our fingers crossed that we can make that one go this year. We've implemented a voucher program where if you live outside of transit, you don't have anything, you may be able to go to a neighbor or a friend and they can get a modest mileage reimbursement for giving you that trip. And we're working with Weber and Davis counties and their aging services to do that. And we're also demoing that across the state with the Association of Governments, where they're all demonstrating pilot projects this year utilizing that. And we have a little bit of grant money to make an electronic version of that, because right now it's all paper-based and it's old-fashioned and it's difficult, time-consuming, and costs a lot of money. But that still leaves that there's a lot of gaps for these individuals. There's limited operating funds for the vehicles that are out there. There's the inability to share resources. There's policies that make it difficult. I don't know if you guys know, but there's an iron curtain between Davis and Weber County when they have vehicles. And the counties from Davis County will not go into Weber County, and the vehicles from Weber County will not go into Davis County because their funding is for the county. So there's policy barriers that make it difficult for them to get their folks that just need to go to the doctors or to dialysis or something like that. Technology is always a problem. There's limited funding, and so we've been working on that over the past 3 years to build that up. There's no dedicated state funding for specialized transportation outside of DSPD trips. And so we're really reliant on that little bit of federal funding that comes into our world. So what does all that mean? Senator Harper is here today, and I would need to certainly acknowledge his effort in our department this past while. He has challenged us to come up with a comprehensive plan, kind of an overarching, what is the solution for this? And he really went to bat for us, and up at the state legislature was able to get an apportionment of $250,000 for us to go out and to develop this comprehensive plan. And so with that this year, and we will be reporting back to the legislature on that effort with what we recommend to be a big solution for this issue. And so we are really excited and thankful for the opportunity that we can get a comprehensive solution developed, and working with all of our partners and working with all the stakeholders that are in this mix together to try and come up with something definitive. Now, it's not going to be free. It may not be easy, but I think we're going to get there. And now we have some really good support in order for us to really push that and move that ball forward. And we're really, really excited about that. They also were able to give us, for our technology needs, $70,000 a year ongoing to help us support those efforts. And so that's kind of it in a nutshell as we kind of hit you with a fire hose of what we do. Do you have any questions for us?
Questions? Go ahead.
Well, one, I just want to commend you and Senator Harper for taking this on. I personally was in a situation with an individual who arrived at a location with a electric vehicle, electric wheelchair. But during his time in the building, there was a downpour and not a good way for him to get home. No umbrella, nothing. And it took over an hour to find a ride because it was after 6 p.m. But, there is extremely limited resources if you don't schedule ahead of time the ride you need, which is a whole nother barrier.
To give you an idea about that, there is only one taxi company that has one wheelchair accessible vehicle in our area. And so if you need a ride if you arrive at the airport in a mobility device and you need a wheelchair accessible vehicle, you may be waiting for a long time in order to get that. So the scope is big, and we're doing all that we can to try and address that and find, the best way, the most efficient way that we can take all the resources that are out there in the valley. And I don't think it's a vehicle problem. If we start to look beyond UTA's vehicles and the nonprofits' vehicles, and you look at, we're not even going here yet, but when you look at all of the assisted living centers that have a vehicle sitting in their parking lot 7 days a week, there's a lot of resources that we could tap into. But we're going to need a lot of help in getting that coalition of people together to solve this comprehensively.
Mayor, go ahead.
How does this interface with the FlexTran system?
Yeah, so my boss, Cheryl Beveridge, is here. She runs that for UTA, and our paratransit service is there to supplement fixed routes. So when someone doesn't have the ability to ride a fixed route bus or train, they can get a paratransit trip. And so we have a very strict eligibility that says, that tests them. What's your ability to be able to get on a bus or a train? And if they can't, and if they're within 3/4 of a mile of that system, then we can provide you a trip. But as you know, a lot of people live outside of 3/4 of a mile of a bus or a train. So really that restricts, quite frankly, a lot of people from getting any sort of service. So we're held up to the law to provide that within 3/4 of a mile, which is what we do. But beyond that, we're trying to fill the gaps that the paratransit, and since our eligibility is so tight, we really obey the letter of the law. There's a lot of people that have mobility issues that don't qualify for paratransit, right? Because their disability may be not as severe, but they still have a mobility problem. So they may not qualify for paratransit, but they still can't get to a bus. It's really difficult. Does that answer your question?
So I'm going to ask a question that I'm sure you don't have the answer to, and that's probably part of the study you're trying to do is, where are you? Are you meeting 25% of the need, 50% of the need? Are we 5%? What is the disparity?
It's pretty low. Our projects have been, I think they've been successful, but they've been very modest. And so, when you look, I think a good barometer is what is happening with Salt Lake County Aging. Salt Lake County Aging was, like I said, they were turning down 400 trip requests per month only for medical trips. Now, that was when they opened it up without any financial eligibility criteria. So the only way that they could really stop having those turndowns is by saying, well, we're only going to take these people if you only have so much money. So I think that's a good example of how much need there is. There's a lot of, we don't know of what that unmet need is. People are making do.
The challenge, and I'm sure everyone understands this, is you want to provide that, and there may be one-time funding, but you need to find a way to have the continuity, something they can count on that spans the hour. I mean, it's
absolutely.
Boy,
yep.
What a job. I don't. Well, we'll see what we can do to help.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you. Paul Drake. Yeah. Okay. We're gonna go over some. Every time you do this, I mean, how many have you done so far
This year we did 4.
Yeah.
Here's another 4.
Okay. I appreciate all you do.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Chair, thank you for your time. Thank you all for your time. I'm Paul Drake. I'm the Senior Manager of Real Estate and Transit-Oriented Development at UTA. I'm accompanied by Kevin Leo, our TOD Planning Specialist. UTA and its municipal partners have been pretty busy, as you guys are aware. On these plans, we're here to talk about another batch, 4 additional plans. Like I said, Kevin Leo's here, and I want to recognize him for all the hard work that he's put into these, as well as Levi Roberts from our strategic planning department. They've done a great job shepherding these plans for UTA. We also have with us representatives from the Associated Cities, Greg Montgomery from Ogden City, Brian Burnt from Midvale City. You heard from Mayor Riding, and we also have Scott Langford from West Jordan City. Thanks to all of them and their teams for their involvement and their leadership. So we are, let's see, I think we skipped some slides, but what I want to do is talk a little bit about why we have to come to the local advisory board. We're presenting these, as you know, because the state statute requires that this body approve all TOD plans, and that you recommend them for final approval and adoption by the Board of Trustees. Again, these plans do not commit UTA to develop these sites or contribute land or funds. They're meant to be a vision and a guide for future development. And if these sites are selected by the Board of Trustees, then these will guide those efforts. In compliance with state statute, UTA adopted the revised TOD policy in January, as you remember. According to that policy, the local advisory board reviews and approves the station area plans, which guide the rest of the development process. So this is the chance for that local advisory board to approve plans, and every decision after this made by the Board of Trustees will be based off of recommendations from this body and those included in the station area plans themselves. Station area plans are intended to be a shared regional, local, and UTA vision for the district around each transit hub. They include community outreach efforts to solicit public feedback. Each plan identifies strategic recommendations, which are specific efforts communities and other stakeholders can make to ensure the success of the plan. As mentioned, station area plans are approved by the local advisory board and the Board of Trustees. The plans to be reviewed today are ordered north to south. We have Ogden Central, 7200 South, 7800 South Center Street, and West Jordan City track stations. With respect to your time, I'll try and stick to the script, but please feel free to ask us any questions or questions to our guests as we'll invite them up. First one is Ogden Station Area Plan. This was branded the Ogden on Board. If we could have Greg Montgomery, who's here to represent Ogden City, come up, please. Greg, if you can introduce yourself.
Pleasure to be here. My name is... See, the button's on. There we go. My name is Greg Montgomery. I'm the planning manager for Ogden City. And as we have been, as a city, trying to rebrand ourselves for the last 20 years, As you know, rail is one of the key parts of the founding of the city or its development, and as we look to May 10th will be a key part of our participation with the nation. But one of the things we've tried to do in the city is try to rebrand the downtown and try to get housing downtown and try to get new development to occur downtown. We went through a process of where we basically tore down a lot of our fabric to make parking lots. And that is not a good way to keep a city healthy. One of our goals has been to try to create at least 4,700 new dwelling units downtown, to create new business offices downtown, to attract the employment that is needed to keep a healthy downtown area, and to go beyond just the present boundaries of Wall Avenue. As you're aware, the front runner station's on the west side of Wall Avenue, but nothing happens on the west side of Wall Avenue. And we need to try to break that image that a whole city can extend beyond those street boundaries. And in developing a transit center at that front runner station in that area is key to move that forward and to make those changes and see that it can happen. I just mentioned to Paul, and he was involved early on in August. We had a senior class at Utah State University do a design charrette as far as their senior project of what could happen, what is the vision beyond what we see now. That has led to ideas of what can happen west of Wall Avenue, how you take the front runner station and do development there. And we just came back from a little trip Monday and Tuesday, with the mayor, city council members, different staff of the city, potential developers, to show what can happen around a train station. We went to Denver and looked at what took place in the last 20 years there, where that Union Station and everything else around it was vacant land. And now you would never realize that that is what it had been because of the development of housing and offices in and around that area. And so we see this as the next part of our vision in moving forward and again, creating the downtown as a place to live and work. And then to be able to tie transit as a key part of how do you go to the future and not be limited by the car or the driver's license that was shown, but to move forward and be able to take this not only with the front runner, but as we talk about, I mentioned today about the BRT from the station up to Weber State and McCady Hospital. This is a key node for all that to take place, and we feel it's a very important project.
Thank you, Greg. The Ogden Central Station Area Plan was funded by a grant from the Federal Transit Administration and was part of a larger effort that studied the area around the new bus rapid transit corridor, as Greg mentioned, which connects the Ogden Central Station with downtown, McCady Hospital, and the Weber State campus. The plan identified 4 key nodes along the corridor. Our discussion today will focus primarily on Ogden Central Station. This site is significant. It is served by a variety of transit modes, is surrounded by a mix of uses, and is proximate to downtown, historic 25th Street, and the junction. UTA controls 12 acres within the station area. There was an extensive public outreach process during this plan. The vision for the area is a mixed-use, multimodal gateway to the city. Short-term development recommendations include commercial development around the station and along Wall Avenue, enhanced connectivity, and space preserved for future development. As circumstances allow, those additional parcels could be filled with multifamily development. It's important to note that UTA's property at the station currently has deed restrictions against residential and like uses. Those restrictions would have to be removed prior to construction of multifamily units on this site. It's an obstacle, but it's not insurmountable. Recommendations for the plan were identified as strengthen pedestrian and bike connections to the station, create inclusive places, create complete neighborhoods. Staff recommends approval of the Ogden Station Area Plan and recommendation for adoption by the Board of Trustees. Are there any questions that we could respond to? Go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you. On the housing piece, would that require some sort of cleanup of the land, or how would you?
Right now, the deed restrictions The deed restrictions were put in place by Union Pacific, who initially owned the property. And generally, Union Pacific, when they sell property, they do put blanket deed restrictions on there to protect themselves. It's rail corridor, and often there are contaminants on the site, and so they put that in there just to reduce their own liability. What we would have to do is engage Union Pacific and give them some reason to remove that deed restriction. We would also have to demonstrate that the site is clean enough so that they would be comfortable in removing that deed restriction. So there are several steps between where we're at now and when that could be removed. And one of them is convincing UP to remove it.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Other questions? Okay.
Okay.
So we're going to take
I'll,
these one at a time or go through all of them?
At the end, I'm sorry to not make that clear, but at the end
right.
we'll make a motion. Okay. Thank you, Craig. Midvale station area plans are at 7200 South Station, 7800 South Center Street. They were completed in a combined effort, so they'll be presented as such. We'll invite Brian Burnt, thank you for coming, to introduce himself. We also have Christine Richmond, who was our consultant on this project, that she may, if she would like, come up.
Thank you very much. I'm Brian Barrett. I'm the Assistant City Manager. I came into the process in the middle of it, just at the end, so Christine may fill in a lot of the blanks. The city had the opportunity to get funding through the Wasatch Front Regional Council funding to start the discussion on this, and the city benefited by that funding to have 2 areas studied. As you may know, the city has 3 transit stops. The Center Street, which is just off of roughly 80th South and State Street, the 72nd one, which is roughly 3rd West, and 7200, which is just east of I-15, and then the third is at Bingham Junction, which is seeing a lot of traffic. The study that looked at this was the 72nd Street, or 72nd South, and the Center Street. The Center Street one currently does have development happening around it, but both of the sites that are in this study are ripe for redevelopment. And so we're excited to be able to offer potential developers and property owners the opportunity to come in and actually be a part of this very unique opportunity with this. I don't know if there's anything else, Christine.
Turn it off.
You're on now.
It was a test. Sorry, I failed. I just wanted to point out that the city had received some development applications for the station areas that there'd been a bit of community discussion around what would be best and what would be appropriate there. So the planning process included a pretty robust neighborhood in outreach effort to really talk to area residents about what it means to have a transit stop in your neighborhood and how that can benefit you and how we can address some of the challenges that they had already identified. So that was a key component of this master planning process.
All right, thank you both. The study area for these plans are roughly a half mile around each station. As you can see, they're close enough to overlap, so the findings in each are interrelated. The sites are served by light rail and bus and surrounded by a mix of uses. They are located central to the valley and have good access to State Street and I-15. UTA controls roughly 7 acres with areas. There was an extensive outreach process, as Christine mentioned. A lot of good participation from the neighborhoods. The vision for the 7200 South Station area is a mixed-use urban core, including high-density residential, ground floor commercial, office, and hospitality. And this is an illustration of how the site could be developed. Recommendations for the 7200 South area are to increase people space as opposed to automobile space, better connect to the community, focus on hospitality uses, create a brand as an entry to the community and a gateway to recreation. The vision for the Center Street area is for a mixed-use center starting with commercial uses and transition to high-density residential. This is an illustration of how that could be developed. Recommendations include encourage transformative development, locate intense uses on main roads, brand the area as a village center and activity hub. Staff recommends approval of the 7200 South and Center Street Station Area plans and recommendation for adoption by the Board of Trustees. We field any questions.
Mayor, any comments?
We have been very blessed to have UTA bus lines that go to Brighton and Alta come along 7200 South. And this has been a focus of our community development, economic development, is to bring people to that corridor to take advantage of those bus lines rather than getting in a 10-mile long parking lot up the canyons. And so we are encouraging people to use these hotels in this area all along 7200. And it's been very beneficial in that regard. We have lots of fun plans that are coming to fruition as we develop these corridors.
Any questions? Anyone else? Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, moving on to West Jordan, could we invite Scott Langford? And if he wants, you've heard from Mayor Riding, but he could join us as well if you'd like. Thank you.
I just don't know if I want to get in an arm wrestle with the mayor there. He looks like he take me pretty easy, so. Okay.
I don't hold a candle to Carlton Christensen.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, my name is Scott Langford. I'm the Development Services Director for the City of West Jordan. This is a long time coming, this city center area. I began my working for West Jordan in about '05. I moved up from the Phoenix area where I worked with the Metro Light Rail Station. In 2007, we created our city center core zone and subsequently our transit station overlay district for this area. It has a lot of potential, and we have a lot of the players already in place for the first phase to move forward, including UTA, the city, and the Jordan School District. We have approximately 26 acres that are ready to move forward. And that constitutes about 62% of the first phase to really get moving. You'll see here that what we like most about this plan is that it's based on a very nimble and flexible grid system. And we've had several studies done on this property over the years. Many have their own positive merits. This one provides a good opportunity for us to get initial inertia or momentum moving forward so that we can really develop this area. We've got where the city's actively pursuing property acquisition in this area currently. We're also looking at developing a cultural arts facility in the general study area. And we've got about 40,000 vehicle trips per day on Redwood Road at this location, including one of your busiest, I believe, bus routes 217 that goes up Redwood Road. And all of this is just prime opportunity that we see that if we continue to partner with UTA, this can be a very successful property.
Thank you. Hear anything to add?
Just some of the things that are in that same campus area. There's a county health department, the county library, district court building, just all right there. The DA's office built a new building right in that same area, and it's right across the street from the existing track station where all this is. An 80-acre park right there as well. We see an awful lot of people coming and going from the track station, and the buses going in and out of there because it's right across the street from our city hall. So this would be a huge example of how we can increase the mobility of people in this part of the valley. As Mayor Orson mentioned, the east-west traffic is really not the best in this section of the valley, and and having more people right here is, we do get a lot of pressure, the cities do, from the legislature, from the state and the county, and about how we need to increase our density. We truly believe that has to happen, but it has to happen in the right place. And we think that this is an ideal place where we can have a high density, where it's close to all of these amenities and close to a track station just right there. So we just think this is just an ideal opportunity for this. Thank you.
I was just thinking car dealerships are not going to like you, because you're going to just have people walking and taking tracks. But that's good. That's
and there's
good.
not a car dealership in West Jordan.
Then we're good then. Okay. That's
All right, thank you. The station is located east of the West Jordan City Hall, as the mayor mentioned, across Redwood Road. The plan incorporated a large area around the station and focused on property between the tracks platform and 7800 South. Okay, there was a significant public outreach effort. The vision for the site is to create a regional amenity, focus on entertainment, create a mixed-use downtown that is walkable and bikeable. The plan calls for improved connections between key open spaces. The initial phase would focus on the station properties and neighborhood grocery. It would also include a shared parking garage that would serve transit patrons in the adjacent commercial space. This is an illustrative scheme of how it could develop out. This property becomes available. As Scott mentioned, it is designed to be a tight grid system that's easily walkable and connected. Recommendations for the plan include engage stakeholders, including landowners and potential tenants, adopt the plan, identify funding for infrastructure, improve zoning to accommodate plan recommendations. Staff recommends approval of the West Jordan City Center plan and recommendation for approval or adoption by the Board of Trustees. Any questions on this one?
we good? Go ahead.
So the mayor emphasized, and it was emphasized in the packet, the joint cooperation of the school district. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how much they're involved?
Yeah, they, when the district split a few years back and the Canyon District was created, the Jordan District had to find another location. This turned out to be an okay location for them. It's very long and very spread out. It has the space that they need. They probably would like something in a little bit tighter location. They are a willing partner and willing to move. Obviously, they would want to be made whole in this so that it wouldn't cost them anything to do this. And so it's a matter of trying to figure out how this can happen with the developer and how the city can participate with them. But it's very encouraging for us to know that they are a willing partner with us. They contributed too as part of the study that was done.
So the buildings there are district offices, not schools?
That is correct. They are the district offices. That's the Auxiliary Services Building. They have another office. Their main office is in the Jordan Landing area of West Jordan, and these are the Auxiliary Services Building. So there are offices there, and they have some warehouse space there, and they are not opposed to even. They also own property in Jordan Landing, which they could build another building there and move some of the offices there, and then another warehouse space that could be closer to their bus depot that they have in West Jordan as well. So,
Steve?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank all the cities involved today. You know, we've got another great group of projects. These have been very collaborative studies. Wasatch Front, UTA, the local jurisdictions, the other property owners involved have all really come together to look at these and come up with good solutions for these sites that really take advantage of the transit infrastructure that UTA has built. And that's really what we wanted to see, right? So these are all, I believe, very worthy of your favorable consideration.
Any other questions? Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
I have a question, just kind of a general question, probably more toward Paul. This is referring back to the document that we approved in our January meeting, the flow.
Right.
In that flow diagram, it shows that prior to coming to the UTA board for approval is system analysis. But I think that if I understand it right, that is going to be done after the board's approval. I just want to know how this document that we approved, how we're following it.
I have to apologize if that's not clear. Those two processes actually happen concurrently. So we are doing a system analysis right now on all of our stations to help us prioritize TOD efforts. But the station area plan is a required element of each project prior to moving on. It feeds into the system analysis tool. It's a criteria for eligibility and weighting. The system analysis tool, though, what it does, there's really nothing to approve for this body. Just what it does is it helps us prioritize the sites, which is a board function. So that will go to the board. They'll see whether there is a station area plan in place, and then there will be the weighting takes into account whether a station area plan is in place and how well those strategic recommendations are being put in place.
So then I think in total there's 8 plans that the board will act on. They will be prioritized through the system analysis, and that prioritization will then go to the board. Is that, I'm just trying to understand the flow of the document.
Yeah, absolutely. The system analysis tool actually takes into account all of the potential station areas, regardless of whether there's a station area plan in place. Station area plan is required, though, before we go out for RFP. And that's just reflective of the whole purpose of the system analysis tool. It's one to help select sites, but it's also to help educate cities, the development community, etc., about where TOD would be possible and what are the steps to make it more feasible, if that makes sense. So the system analysis tool might identify station areas that, just by their nature and the way that the land use has developed out, might be a good TOD site, but there might not be a station area plan in place. If that's the case, then we can go to those cities and say, hey, you've got a really great opportunity for TOD here. Let's do a station area plan and figure out a way to really catalyze TOD development around in this station area and these districts. So we can use that as an educational tool. The station area plan is more specific to each individual site, and it's required before we go out for development because the criteria for selecting developers comes from these plans. We need to know what are the appropriate land uses, or what would fit in within that shared vision between the local municipality, regional leaders, and UTA, so that we know what to expect from a development partner. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to clarify that what we're approving is that these plans meet a level of readiness and align with the UTA objectives. But from there, all 8 will need to be prioritized, and only 3 or 4 may be selected. Is that right?
That is correct.
So,
we are
we're
limited.
not giving anybody any false ideas that by approving this, that there's definitely a go. These are just moving up the process.
That's correct. Yeah, thank you for clarifying.
Okay.
Actually, they thought today was the day that their project would be the #1, so.
Well, this is definitely a critical step to moving forward.
Thank you. Okay. Well, board, it's, I believe we're on track to make a motion or recommendation.
I would move approval of Resolution AR 2019-03-01, approving the Ogden Central, Midville Tracks, and West Jordan City Center Station area plans.
Second.
A motion second. Any discussion? Call for the vote? No, go ahead.
Just
go ahead.
Quick comment. One of the comments that was brought up as we were going through those station plans is just the push from the legislature as far as higher density and some more affordable housing.
Encouragement.
No, absolutely. Whatever word you want to take there.
No, it's all good.
As strong encouragement. But obviously, transportation is probably the most essential component of that. And I think we've seen several great plans presented to us of how we can facilitate that. And we know that that's an essential component is making transportation accessible to some of these. And so my comment is I appreciate that component that has been brought into each of these plans to how to capitalize on that. And I just want to make a comment that now I think funding is an important component of that. Make those two objectives really come together. And I think there has to be a look forward of the funding that is going to take place in order to accomplish this and to meet the demand for housing on one side, but to make sure that it conforms with the transportation needs of people to be able to get to those essential services that they need. Mayor Riding mentioned, obviously out in his area, a lot of those essential services that are already coupled with right there. And I think those are one of the other things that we really have to look at as we continue through this process is, again, the connectivity to the people, the residential component, and those essential services that have to be provided in the transportation that is key to making that happen.
Thank you. I think it bodes well for all cities as we see these models go forward and the success of those models. I think it'll give us encouragement to follow it. Troy?
I think it's important to note that the Utah State Senate has encouraged it to just the proper level.
Okay. Well, let's call for the vote. We'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. Appreciate your participation today. Okay, next on the item, Kim, you're going to address some trustee retirement benefits discussion.
Hi, thank you. I'm Kim Ulibarri. I'm the Chief People Officer here at UTA, and I am here to just bring some information that we were asked to collect after the January Advisory Board meeting. If you recall, we had a discussion, or it was identified from some advisory board members during that meeting that the trustees of UTA were not able to be eligible for our defined benefit retirement plan due to the fact that it had a 5-year vesting schedule and their terms are 4 years or less as they stand today. And so during that meeting, members of this committee, or this board, I'm sorry, asked us to just go back and look at some different options for that. So while I just wanted to remind this board of the 2 retirement options that we do offer to all of our full-time employees here, their standard retirement plans. The first one is the defined benefit plan that we identified they wouldn't be eligible to vest into. That's got the 5-year vesting schedule and also doesn't have a COLA. So because we don't have a COLA in that particular plan, we also offer all of our full-time employees a defined contribution plan where they contribute 3% of their salary into, if an employee contributes up to 3% of their salary into that 457, they can receive a maximum match of 2%. So we have both of those, and that one does not have a vesting period. So I just want to be clear, we're talking about looking for a replacement plan for the defined benefit plan. So in the interim, we went and we did some research, and we contacted a number of local entities, looked at some universities to see what they did for employees that might be in this type of situation, or to look at alternative types of plans that they offered in lieu of a defined benefit plan. And what we found was that the most common plan was to offer a defined contribution plan that was funded solely by the employer and didn't require an employee contribution. I will say, I want to say a couple of things first. We know we didn't do, we didn't contact every local entity in the entire state of Utah. We did a quick look at some of the larger ones in the universities. We did send out a memo in the packet that had some misinformation, so we have an updated memo. Is it? Okay, you have it, yes. And I want to apologize for that. In having conversations between my HR team and, the different groups, talking about defined benefit, defined contribution rates, we ended up getting originally some defined benefit contribution information that we misinterpreted as defined contribution information. So the memo that you have in your packet now, or right in front of you, is a little bit different than what came out in the memo, and it's been updated to with that information that we were able to catch. We caught that earlier, and we were able to get more updated information. So we did just a quick check-in, well, not a quick check-in, we did a thorough check-in with these different folks and found that the organizations that are on this sheet offer an option of an employer contribution into a defined contribution as an alternative to defined benefit plans when someone is in a different kind of situation, maybe appointed, or might not be able to meet that vesting period. So we looked at Salt Lake City, and they have two different options depending on whether a person was eligible for the Tier 1 or Tier 2 URS system. And those are those numbers there. We talked to Salt Lake County. Salt Lake County did also offer an ability to waive the 4-year vesting period into the defined benefit plan. That was something that we didn't see in some of the other places. The University of Utah, Utah Valley University, and Weber State all had a defined contribution plans that were, an option outside of the DB plan that offered a 4.2% employer paid contribution. And then we included Layton City in here. It has a 10% option that is similar to the Tier 2 option for state employees, that if you can choose to have 10% put in either the DB or the DB plan or the DC plan. These were what we felt were a good view of areas. We understand you might want more information as we're moving forward. This was just where we landed, where we started to find some comparables for you. Below, you'll see some averages there. We just averaged all of them together. It comes to a 15.2% average employer contribution. And then we pulled out the non-university average. That was 15.9, and then included the university average, which they were all the same there. We recognize there's there's probably a couple of different ways that we can look at how to address this, but that creating an employer-paid defined contribution was a common practice and seemed like one option that you might want to look at. We would recommend that we probably take that road and establish an employer-paid DC plan for our trustees, and really with an employer contribution rate somewhere between 14.2% and the 15.9% that were, came out of that average. I want to point out, we did talk briefly with our actuary for our current defined benefit pension plan, Milliman, and just to try to get a feel for what would it take, what would a good employer contribution be for a defined contribution plan that replaces UTA's current defined benefit plan. We gave them kind of the scenario, and they were recommending between a 14 and 15, and they did not see these numbers, between a 14 and 15% employer contribution in that. You're not comparing apples to apples when you are looking at defined benefit and defined contribution. However, they felt that over time that would be the right percentage of pay, somewhere between 14 and 15%, to create some sort of similar benefit in value at the end of, in someone's retirement. So this is one methodology that we think is a good methodology, but wanted to hear from you and see if you needed more information, if you wanted us to go a different direction, or if you had questions about where we landed here.
Questions? Please.
So we looked at different entities for salary.
Yeah.
So did none of those entities, I say some of them, but did they not have defined contribution or benefit plans?
Yeah, we sent out an email survey to many of those same ones, and we weren't able to, we didn't get anything back that said they did something as an alternative to a defined benefit program outside of the tier 2, if in URS, where there's choice on whether you go into that DB plan or that DC plan. I will say that, so we didn't do a 1-for-1 on that comparison. We could certainly try again. I don't have that right in front of me, which ones we looked at, but if you wanted, we could certainly look at that.
Yeah, I'm just curious why we moved away from the previous comparison pool.
I appreciate that.
And the reason you couldn't enter into the current plan is due to the bargaining issue with the...
Yeah, we don't want, yes. I think that's part of why we are recommending creating a DC plan, is because we would have to do, bargain any changes to our vesting schedule.
I think this seems to me like a fair way to do it. At least as far as I'm concerned, I think it probably most closely approximates what you would have the other way. I mean, you're not going to get to that, but this seems to me like to be a reasonable approach to do it. Are we looking for a direction, or are we?
I just have a question. So on number 2, that's listed there, the defined contribution, as that sits right now, they wouldn't be eligible to participate in that.
They are eligible to participate in the second plan. So if they contribute up to 3% of their salary, they would be able to get that 2% match.
So that's already available.
That one is available, yes.
Good clarification. Comment?
No, I think it's a great. I'm in favor of this, benefits plan, and I think that I think the percentages are all in line, and somewhere in that 15 to 15.5% is probably what we need to do based on the constraints that we have with having to offer this to everybody and the uniqueness of their positions.
Okay, anyone else? Troy?
I support like 15.5. I think is a good number between the non-university and the average. But I think that would be a number I could easily get behind.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
I'd be supportive of the 15.5 as commented by the other board members as well.
So there are 3 votes. Let's see. Are we getting there?
We need to make a motion.
And make a motion, see where it goes. Okay.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we approve this proposed defined contribution plan, and for the trustees to be able to participate at the level of 15.5%.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Call for the vote. If there's discussion, do you want some discussion? Okay, call for the vote. Is there a roll call vote, or is it? No. By acclamation, all in favor?
Aye.
Well, that sounded like a resounding unanimity, so any opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. All right. Thank you for your work. Other business. Next meeting is for June 12th at 1 o'clock. Motion to adjourn. All in favor? There was a motion and a second, all in the same time. We are stand adjourned. There you go.